So it's 92 degrees out right now. Yesterday this time it was already up there to 97, 98 degrees. So I already brought some cold water down from the well to the chickens so they'll stay cooler, because they drink that cold water and it cools them off. Today it's not quite as hot. I was surprised. I thought it'd be hotter today than it was yesterday. So I'm gonna wait a couple hours before I can bring some cold water. I mean, I could bring it down now, but then I'd have to do it a few times. If I bring it down too early, I'd have to do it again about 4 o'clock. But if I can wait a couple of hours and give them some water, and then I maybe only have to run the well once today. I've been noticing, Carolyn's been noticing too, that in these extreme heat conditions, we're actually doing very well. Not a lot of sweat. And I think it's because we've gotten adjusted to the temperature. We've gotten used to it. The first week it got really hot here, and then it cooled off, hot, cold. The first time it got hot, I was changing my shirts at least twice a day because they were so full of sweat. And now I'm not sweating hardly at all. I'm quite comfortable. Drinking plenty of water. And I think that's key. Got to make sure you drink plenty of water. Boy, the spider webs are terrible. I thought I'd come down in the woods today. It's been a while since I've done that. I mean, I came down a little bit, but I didn't go very deep. Just the other day, my wood pile fell over. I'll pick that up in the fall when the snakes go away. And the reason I bring this up is, again, I've been talking quite a bit about the differences between preppers / stockpilers and off-gridders / self-sustaining during an SHTF situation. And then when it comes to temperature, it may not even be an SHTF situation. Stuff hits the fan. Preppers never get to practice what they preach. And I never heard of one actually test themselves. They tell you what you got to do, but they never test themselves. Well, we all know that when you come out of an air-conditioned building into the hot sun, it's miserable. Imagine that your electric went down, it's 100 degrees outside, and you have no way to cool yourself off. And if you live on a well, now you don't even have a way to get water out of the ground. So it's going to be quite miserable, and you're not going to be ready for it. Carolyn and I have decided not to run an air conditioner in the tiny house. Of course, the house is in the shade. That helps out a lot. We can run an air conditioner. I've showed you that before. We had one when we were in the camper building the tiny house. We put an air conditioner in there. But for 2 years straight now, we haven't. And this year's been significantly hotter. Maybe not as long because it cools off, gets hot, cools off. But it has been significantly hotter on the hot days. And the other day I was called crazy that this is just intolerable heat. Well, I'm not crazy, I got used to it. If you're going to be preparing for the SHTF, it's not just stockpiling. It's a complete state of mind. It's practicing what you preach, it's doing it every day, and living off-grid. Or homesteading. But you got to get rid of some of the things that you're going to lose during the SHTF. I don't know, I got notes that are going all over the place today. The problem with stockpiling and prepping is it gives you a false sense of security. I've said this before. The other day, or I guess it was yesterday, somebody said, I want you to make a video to show how you can combine prepping with off-gridding. Well, I can't do that. Prepping means stockpiling. Prepping means sitting in an air conditioner house. Prepping means going out and buying a bunch of stuff that I don't need. I already have what I need. I live in a tiny house, I can't stockpile. So what I am beginning to realize is people want a false sense of security, because that's what prepping is. You are going to run out of a stockpile. But as long as you think, okay, I can do it, I got all this prepping stuff, eventually you're going to run out and it's over with. And that would be a really scary time for me, knowing what's heading my way. Oh, I tell you, the woods are just beautiful. I was expecting more limbs down. We have a limb down over there, but we don't have many more down. We had a huge storm come through. Now, what I will say is prepping and being ready with stockpiled materials is really good for short-term problems. The electric goes out for a week. You have a storm come through. Those kind of things. And the preppers who talk about that instead of SHTF, I completely agree with. So I got a lot of notes here, and I'm kind of all over the place. I think I said that already. So another thing that came up the other day is community. In order to be a good prepper, you're going to have to establish a community of people that can do things that you can't. And I just adamantly disagree with that. I guess it is in all your mindset. Are you going to try to rebuild society? I'm not. I'm not trying to rebuild society now. I think it's already broke. And I said back in my 30s, in order for me to be happy in this society, I got to get away from it. And so that's what I've done. Just because SHTF happens doesn't mean I'm going to change my idea. Oh, I got to rebuild society. Society is the one that let it fail. I just need to keep myself happy. That may sound cold, but in reality, if you're not going to rebuild society, there's only 4 things that you have to survive. 4 things: food, water, shelter, and security. And pretty much that is all Carolyn and I have. Of course, we have entertainment. We have Netflix and internet. We have Amazon Prime, so we can watch TV. But we don't have to do that. We could always go get books. Well, how can you get books? Well, the only place during Hurricane Katrina that was not vandalized or anything stolen from was the library. So I would just go to the library. We pick out a bunch of books that we like, and that would be our entertainment. Beyond that, I don't think we need anything. So we're self-sustaining. One of the things that keeps coming up about the stockpiling, I kind of mentioned it, like I said, my ideas are kind of all over the place. I hope you'll keep up with me. I think stockpiling is a bad idea. Now, that being said, we do have a stockpile of canned chicken. Somebody said you shouldn't can. What you should do is raise your chickens, and when you're ready to eat one, butcher it then. Just keep them alive until you're ready to eat them. Well, that's a terrible idea because you got to feed them. When you put them in a can, you no longer have to feed them. They're feeding you. Now, somebody's going to say, well, you can still get the eggs from them. And 2 things with that. One, that's assuming you don't have roosters. You know, because roosters don't lay eggs. Secondly, if you get that many eggs, now you're having to stockpile your eggs, water glass them, preserve them. I'd much rather preserve the chicken. It's easier for me to store jars of food instead of buckets of eggs. So like I was saying earlier, folks who want to prep want a false sense of security. The only other thing it could be is they don't want to work, or they imagine that the work on off-grid is beyond their capabilities. I always hear that. I'm just too old, or I have too many medical conditions. Well, I don't agree with that. Carolyn had a medical condition. She could barely walk with her back. And off-grid probably saved her. She'll live a lot longer now, I think, than she would have if we'd never moved here. Of course, we went on the meat diet, and I wholeheartedly believe that the meat diet is the best diet in the world. When you're on carbohydrates, and everything has carbohydrates nearly, except for meat, any processed food has carbohydrates. Most vegetables, not all, but most, corn has a ton of carbohydrates. And carbohydrates causes inflammation. I was telling you a while back that I had a breathing problem. That was from inflammation. My bronchia, I think is what it's called, bronchial tube, it was getting inflamed. It was making it hard for me to breathe. Prior to that, I think the things in my lungs were getting inflamed, making it hard for me to breathe. Once I started the meat diet, I didn't change anything. I just started eating meat. Inflammation went away. And I know that because I think my shoulder was getting inflamed also from splitting all that firewood. Well, it's gone away. Carolyn's back's the same way. She's got discs that are out of place. And as she would walk, the disc would, move around and cause inflammation. Well, now that she's eating meat, she's not getting the inflammation. So yeah, the disc still hurts, but it doesn't layer up for weeks at a time. So it's a fear. I don't want to call it lazy, but prepping is a false insecurity and the inability to believe that you can get better by doing this. Now, I was saying that we have a stockpile of food. Again, all over the place. Well, we do have a stockpile. I was telling you that we got 300 days worth of canned food. But that's important because that's our backup plan. Let's assume something happened to our chickens. SHTF happens, and I don't know, we had a heat wave and I didn't have enough water to give them cold water, and a majority of them died, or even all of them died. Well, I got 300 days that I can live on my backup plan, on my 300 jars of food. Meat, it's all meat, while I incubate some new chickens. The eggs that I have in my fridge, they're not below freezing. They'll last for 7 days after they're laid. As long as they stay above 32 degrees, I can incubate them. So I'll take out the last 7 days of eggs, incubate them, and then within 6 months, 8 months, I would have new chickens laying eggs. So I only ate 8 months worth of food of my backup plan, my canned food. That's my backup. Whereas preppers, their backup plan is their primary plan. And I never hear them talk about what are they going to do afterwards except community. I hear a lot about community. Coming out here was a bad idea. I got all these spider webs on me. So I was saying earlier that a lot of these people, YouTube preppers, people in the comment section say you got to have community because you don't know how to do everything. Well, you do know how to do everything, especially if you start today. If you start off-gridding, get yourself a camper, find yourself a piece of property, get yourself some chickens, and you learn how to do it now before SHTF happens, and you'll be an expert on how to raise your own food. Now, one last comment is I can't find property. I can't find property. I live in Missouri. I can't find property. Well, I mean, we found this property 2 years ago. Carolyn still yet today can find property under $10,000 right here in this area. Of course, I'm not going to tell you where I'm at, but you can find it. Again, I wonder if people are really taking their lives seriously and their research seriously. So if you will you click that super thanks button down there? I'd really appreciate it. So if I can inspire you to live your dream, so you can live your dream. Thanks for watching.